Another freak, he plays for Penn State, is Shaka Toney. And there was one particular series in that game, and we can just talk about the Indiana Penn State. We could talk about that for an hour because that was the most important result of the weekend. It was the most just the strangest game and the most exciting finish of the season by far, thus far, at 36-35. That Penn State gave up 211 yards of total offense in that game. And considering that was an overtime game, so Indiana obviously had the 25 yards of offense in the overtime, and they went 75 yards on the last drive that shouldn't have existed because of James Franklin. So we're at like 111 yards of total offense for Indiana going into the final drive of the game. And of course, Penn State rings up 488 themselves, 2-1 in time of possession, but they blew the ball game. But I bring up Shaka Toney because in what should have been the final drive of the game, he made 4 consecutive plays. He came off the edge, got 2 consecutive sacks, and then on third down, forced another incompletion. On fourth down, he just completely just blew up the play, and like the ball had to be just flung out of bounds. So I don't know where he's going to line up necessarily if they move him around, but that's going to be the test for that great Ohio State offensive line.
I know Nicholas Petit-Ferrer talked about it today and gave him his proper credit. Shaka Toney, a little bit undersized. I've got their depth chart here. Excuse me, 6'3", 252, redshirt senior. And he really uses his speed and his agility to get to the quarterback. And Indiana had a real problem. They had a big kid, like a 360-pound kid, trying to block him at times there at left tackle. And it got ugly a couple times where he just ran right around him. And you would hope and you would think that Ohio State's got better agility with Munford and at left tackle and Petit-Ferrer at the other. They could also have Houseman or somebody chip, as an H-back there at tight end a little bit, or a blocking back perhaps as well to help in those obvious pass situations. But I do believe Penn State's defense, in many respects, this is a no-name Penn State team. I mean, all the star power that we've known in recent years, like Micah Parsons and KJ Hamler, and earlier Saquon Barkley, certainly a couple years ago. But, a lot of the star power is gone. Journey Brown injured. So in many respects, it seems like they've got a couple studs on each side of the ball. Toney, a defensive end. Lamont Wade's played a lot of football at safety, and he kind of cuts both ways. He had an interception in this game, but he also gave up the touchdown pass, I think, in the overtime, I believe, to basically the winning touchdown, because then they got the 2-point conversion. So kind of cuts both ways with him. But over on offense, it feels like it's a 2-man team with Clifford and the tight end, Pat Freiermuth. And then you got some young receivers, some different guys. Jahan Dotson had a pretty good game, and a freshman, Parker Washington, caught a huge touchdown in the overtime as well for Penn State. So it feels like maybe some of the star power isn't there like we've seen out of Penn State in years past. And yet, if it wasn't for some just terrible, terrible head coaching mistakes by James Franklin, they win this game. They were their own worst enemy. 3 turnovers, 10 penalties for 100 yards. They had the ball, the play you referenced, Mark, the 4th down play. They had the ball on downs at the Indiana 15-yard line with 1:47 remaining. Indiana had 1 timeout. Now, I can do this math. That's something like 107 seconds. And, 1 timeout, that means you can take time off after the 2nd down play and the 3rd down play, a total of 80 seconds. You get that down inside 10 seconds before you even have to turn it back over to them on downs on their own 15-yard line. I would take that chance as opposed to scoring. And when they did score and made it a 7-point game, I think the play there would have been to go for 2 to make it a 9-point game and put it out of reach again. But, again, I don't get paid $5 million a year to coach Penn State.
In Franklin, real quick, Tony, Franklin said after the game that they practiced that situation. So what I can't imagine is how can you practice that situation? You can inform your players of situations like that, but how do you practice that situation? Because you would have to say, okay, this situation, there's a minute 12 and they've got 2 timeouts. This situation, there's a minute 33 and they've got all timeouts. This situation, there's 42 seconds. They've got no. How in the world do you practice all those? What the lack of excuse I think that James Franklin basically has is there's a change of possession there. So you've got the entire offense right in front of you on the sidelines, on the field. They're coming out, and really not everybody on the offense needs to know what's going on, but certainly Clifford does, and whomever you're going to give the ball to, Kevon Lee or Devin Ford, and you say, do not score, do not score. So it's on the head coach, even if he practiced, even if he told them, it's the buck stops with him.
It's another example of James Franklin losing a game he shouldn't lose. And every single number in that game was pointing in Penn State's favor. All 3 of their turnovers came in the first half. And so they had enough wherewithal in the second half to limit what Indiana was doing. I mean, you mentioned Shaka Toney. I guess one of my things is pretty much that his 2 sacks came on that same drive. He had maybe he finished with 7 tackles, so he had 5 tackles throughout the game. But I guess maybe I'd like to if he would have been more consistent throughout the game. Although Michael Penix wasn't very accurate, there's no way Indiana should have or Penn State should have lost this game. And when you lose a game where I think they had 99% win probability when they had the ball back. And Steve, yeah, they should have gone for 2, but you're asking James Franklin, who clearly didn't tell his players loud enough, don't score. Now you're expecting him to have this next level of, you know what, let's just go up 9 and forget about even having to worry about going and playing defense. And but even at that point, after Indiana went 4 and out and they had no hope of moving the ball, then you give them all of the momentum back by just giving them another chance. And it was a failure in so many different ways for James Franklin, for the running game. And then I still am not sure how Indiana moved the ball down on that final drive and scored. They looked like a different offense.
They had plenty of time. They had a minute 42. There was a face mask penalty early that moved them almost to midfield. And then they kept working the sideline. I mean, they were at the Penn State 30-yard line with a minute and 15 seconds to go. I mean, it wasn't a matter of are they going to score? It was a matter of how soon are they going to score? And they scored almost too soon. They scored with 20 seconds left and then botched the kickoff. I mean, Indiana, it was like Tom Allen said, I see your mismanagement of the game situation, and I raise you a mismanagement of the kickoff.
Well, to Tony's point, it's almost deflating. Go ahead, Kevin.
Because I think the biggest question was, once Indiana got the ball back, was not were they going to score the touchdown. It was would they be
going to get the 2
conversion.
Yeah.
But, as we talk about Penn State's failures and everything else, they were 0 for 3 in kicking field goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take the Jordan Stout, 57-yarder as time expired off the board. But Jake Pinniger missed a 25-yarder and a 47-yarder. I mean, any points in this game would have changed the fortunes there. So, I mean, it was a failure on many levels. But, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I've watched plenty of games of football through my life where it's like, don't let them score so you can get the ball back or whatnot. And, I just really can't believe that there wasn't something said in a huddle or whatnot. It wasn't like Penn State was in a situation where it was needing to go hurry up or whatever. You should have been able to have a nice little conversation to say, get it and get down on the 1-yard line, get down on the 3-yard line, whatever. And you could see as soon as Devin Ford crossed the end zone, he kind of tried to go back and, the damage was already done.
We saw the same thing with Antonio Pittman back in the 2009 Fiesta Bowl where
that was Boom Heron. Boom Heron scored.
Yeah, Boom. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Where he scored and then
they left too much time on the clock for McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Todd
issue
Gurley.
there was
Todd
they
Gurley.
could have run 3 plays and kicked a field goal on the final play.
Right.
They didn't need a first down. All they needed was whatever it was, a 1 or 2 point game. They needed a 3-point field goal to win the game. He scores a 6-point touchdown. They go for 2. I don't know. I don't think they got it. I think they tried to throw the ball from Beckman to Pryor or something, and it didn't work, or I don't know. But any rate, Texas allowed Ohio State to score a touchdown it didn't need and ultimately won the game. Similar scenario.
What was funny about Todd Gurley with the Falcons on Sunday is that he's done it before. Number one, meaning he's made the right play and he's stopped before the goal line. The other thing is when you're running that fast as an athlete, you should know the time to try to stop isn't the half-yard line. When you're running like a 4-3 to the half-yard line, and then he couldn't get his composure back to bring himself back. But you guys are talking about how Penn State was deflated, and of course they gave up the touchdown. I kind of thought of it the other way, how deflating it was after dominating defensively, giving up 110 yards of total offense, that Indiana scored so easily they didn't even have to convert a 3rd or 4th down on that drive. They only had 1 second down. They just went boom, 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 touchdown.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what it's going to look like, on Saturday. The line for this game is 12 points. And I just look at it and I'm kind of like, we know the history. The games are usually pretty close. Last year, the line was 18 points, I think. And I think that they won 28-17, something like that. And I mean, they had a 21-0 lead. They were cruising. And they turned it over twice, a couple fumbles in the 3rd quarter, and allowed Penn State to get it to 21-17. I'll just say this pretty quickly. If James Franklin, for all of his faults, can't get his team up to win this game, then he never will get them up to win any game, because Ohio State's beaten them 3 years in a row. 2 of those were by a single point in games that Penn State thought they had won. And they are coming off of a miserable loss at Indiana. And if they lose this game, their entire purpose of playing the season is over. They can't win the division. They will not go to a New Year's Six bowl game, and certainly not the playoff. And I mean, their goals are still out there as of today. They could still run the table and hope Indiana loses a couple times, which probably will happen, and still win the division. But if they lose this game, all pretense is over. And you may see guys opt out of the season after this because, why do I need to get hurt when we're basically playing an exhibition season at this point, and the best they can do is the Capital One Bowl or the Citrus Bowl. So, their whole reason for existence is on the line this week.
I still wonder if they have the talent to even make it matter.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. No star power. I don't see a lot of.
Well, go ahead, Toney.
Well, I was just going to say I was listening to an interview with the Penn State beat writer on my cohort Tom Orr's morning show, and he was talking about the receivers, the Penn State receivers. They're just the only playmaker is Jahan Dotson, and he's a smaller guy, and all of the other bigger guys are just possession guys who really aren't going to scare anybody. And that's the problem with, I guess, the entire Penn State offense right now. When Sean Clifford may be your most dynamic player, your most dynamic playmaker, you've got issues.